Welcome to Football Today Team Profiles and Projections. And today we are looking at the Dallas Cowboys, who come in our power rankings at 10th. We have hit the top 10. Last year, the Cowboys went 12-5, won the NFC East. Offensively, they were really good. Ranked first in points per game, second in EPA per play. Defensively, really good too. Fifth in points per game, fourth in EPA per play. This is Mike McCarthy's fifth year as the head coach after being fired by the Packers. Brian Schottenheimer's second year as the offensive coordinator. He's been around the league and promoted when Kellen Moore was fired. Mike Zimmer, the biggest change to this team is Mike Zimmer is his first year as defensive coordinator as Dan Quinn heads to the Washington Commanders as their head coach. Justin, the Cowboys won the division, beat the Eagles and Lions towards the end of the year while losing to the Bills and Dolphins. Dak Prescott played at an MVP level all year. The defense was great. And then they choked in the playoffs and were down 27-0 in the first half against the 7-seed Packers.
Was there not an NFL team whose paths was more predictable last year than the Dallas Cowboys? Now, just because it was predictable does not really excuse that wild card game. And man, did they embarrassment, or really any word, any adjective to describe what that was against the Green Bay Packers, and that playoff performance does not properly do it justice, man. But the Dallas Cowboys are one of the more and most unique teams in the NFL, where I even think their fan base, Bobby, is at a point where they understand and they accept that their team could win 10, 11, 12 games every single year. Every single year, they could win 12 games, yet they are just resounded to the fact that in the playoffs, their team will do nothing. Nothing. And that is a very sad place for a franchise to be. And Bobby, I can't fully explain why this team has so much talent from top to bottom, and the same result kind of just happens with them almost every single year.
And last year being the peak of that, right? Like, yeah, you didn't play well on back-to-back years versus the 49ers, but the 49ers were talented even in the years where they weren't so hot and were led by, Jimmy Garoppolo. And, they beat the Bucks in that, 2 years ago in the wild card round, and Dak played really well in that game, even though that Bucks team was, under 500. But going into that Packers game, like, there's no excuse. I remember tweeting it out too. Like, there's no excuse for Dallas to lose this game. There is zero. They should go out there and they should win. There should be no excuse. They should win this game. And then they blew it. They totally choked. They choke, right? And I hate to talk about, like, because we're going to talk about, like, there's a lot of good on this team, and we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about the changes of Mike Zimmer and stuff. But they are a team that just doesn't perform well against better teams. And whether that's on Mike McCarthy, whether that's on Dak Prescott, because there was a issue there with Jason Garrett as the head coach as well. Last year was probably a little bit of a better year. They were 3-5 versus playoff teams, including the playoff game. They had a win versus the Eagles when we didn't realize the Eagles were totally collapsing. The Lions in the eligible offensive lineman game, and then the Rams in the middle of the season. And then they lost versus the Eagles, the 49ers, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Packers. Dak is a great quarterback, but it starts with him, and I will not put him in the tier of quarterback that I would if it wasn't for the lack of playoff success. Like, he is the one quarterback who I look at and I'm like, I'm judging you by your lack of playoff success, right? Like, does Lamar need to be better in the playoffs? Absolutely. But I don't feel like there's been these, like, choke jobs that have happened every year for Dallas.
Yeah, I feel like it's such lazy analysis.
And their owner knows it too. And like Jerry, the way they're operating is like, yeah, we're tired of this. We're tired of accepting this.
They've dropped the ball, and I hope we talk about the Dak contract situation maybe a little bit down the road. I don't want to fully get into it yet, but they did drop the ball at certain times with, like, these cap hits that Dak Prescott has and how high these cap hits are and everything like that, and the allocation of spending of Dallas. Like, there's certainly questions on that. But Bobby, I feel like it's one of the, and I say lazy as not in calling us lazy, but I don't know what the analysis is with talking about Dak Prescott's playoff success and lack of playoff success. Usually we can come on here and I talk about all the time of, success in the first half or early down pass frequency. Oh, this team runs the ball on a first down. Maybe they can open it up a little bit more. Lack of explosivity. You'll talk, technique and O-line technique and performance or defensive scheme, offensive schemes, shit like that. Where it's not that conversation with the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. It's very sports radio of us.
I was just going to say, you have to be sports radio when you talk about this team.
Yes, you
do. Because there's so much about them that doesn't make sense, right? And you talk about, the Dak contract going into this year. Now, I also think that they've screwed up some things, and I think Dak eventually will be re-signed by the Cowboys. But they should get CeeDee Lamb's contract done. They should, look to get Micah Parsons' contract done. Like, those contracts should be either close to getting done or done. But let's talk about them as a team and not just 3 games over the last 3 years.
Their situation.
They were the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL last year. Now, regular season wise, I would have taken the 49ers, the Lions, and the Rams as just like better offenses, even though they didn't score more points per game. But Dak had the best season of his career, right? Finished 3rd in MVP voting. He's been a really good QB for a long time, and he had his best year. They force-fed CeeDee, and it wasn't his best year talent-wise either, right? The running game wasn't very good. CeeDee Lamb was really their only receiving option, with Jake Ferguson being that number 2. What are your expectations for this offense? They lost Tony Pollard, and they replaced Tyron Smith and Tyler Biadasz with Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe.
There's questions on if they can replicate. Just being one of the let's just call it top 3 because we know San Fran's really good. Let's just call it a top 3 overall efficiency offense, which they were. They scored points in the first quarter at a really high rate. They scored points in the second quarter at a really high rate. I think they were 22nd in the third quarter, and then they scored points really high in the fourth quarter. So they were good. They really were a team that did well at the start of games to get leads, early leads. They continued to throw the ball once they got leads at a pretty high rate. And then even after a rough start to the season in the red zone, they were much better inside the red zone. Like, they started to use Dak Prescott and his legs more inside the red zone. So honestly, Bobby, for me, it's just a question of they're not going to be top 3. I just don't think they are. This running back situation is the worst in the NFL. Having Ezekiel Elliott as your number 1 and having extremely murkiness behind him when Ezekiel Elliott isn't very good, that's not great. They're replacing a left tackle and a center. The Tyler Biadasz I don't really mind as much, but still a guy that's been there for quite a long time now. But Tyron Smith, who played like an all-pro, some major questions on just if this offense can sustain the amount of success that they had. Do I think they'll be top 10? Yes, but it still is a fall off that this team will have to deal with, I think.
So the 2 big question marks I have for them, because the run game is not even a question mark for me. I don't think it's going to be good.
Yeah. No.
Is left tackle, and can they replicate giving CD the ball so much and having it being successful without a true number 2 option? Those are my 2 question marks. And let's start with the passing game. Can they find anything else? He had 181 targets last year
on a 63.5% success rate, Bobby. They didn't just
the
force
highest
feed
catch
him.
rate for the top 10 guys in targets. He had the highest catch rate.
They force fed him, but it also worked, which is crazy.
If he was someone who was targeted 100 times and you looked at his catch rate and yards per, okay, this is good. But they, had 135 catches, 1750 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Nuts.
Which is CD, we talked about it on our over-under episode. CeeDee Lamb's going to be sick. It's just replicating what they did last year with him is, it's just it's almost impossible to do that 2 years in a row. And so that's why my biggest question, because I think Tyler Guyton has looked pretty good in camp. People like him. He's done some well versus Micah Parsons, which is scary if you're in the NFC East. Who is that second guy? Because Jake Ferguson was their number 2 last year, and I love Jake Ferguson. I think he's a good option. He's a good tight end to have. He can do it all, but he shouldn't be your number 2 receiving threat. And honestly, my guy last year, Brandon Cooks, who I thought really was going to have a big impact on that offense, did all right for them, but he only had 57 catches, 650 yards, 8 touchdowns. He'll be 31 this year, so he's getting a year older.
They should have never traded away Amari Cooper.
Yeah, they lost Michael Gallup, who went to the Raiders and then ended up retiring. So Jalen Tolbert, I think it's his 3rd year out of South Alabama. Might be starting on the outside. It's just, that's my biggest question mark, because CeeDee Lamb's going to go off, right? But CeeDee Lamb could have 1,300 yards this year, which is awesome, and have 450 yards less than he did last year. Like, that's my biggest question mark, is like,
yeah. And are you confident in anybody else that's going to pick up those 450 yards? They've used Jalen. I love Jalen Tolbert, and I still am rooting for a path of success for him because I liked him coming out of college, but he's had the opportunities in the past between some injuries, and Cooks has been in and out, and Gallup has been in and out as the years have gone on, and Tolbert at time has been a healthy scratch. So who is that guy in this depth chart? And I'm asking this as an I don't know. Who is that guy in that depth chart that could possibly pick up extra lost CeeDee Lamb yards if it gets there? Well, I don't know.
And they also lost Michael Gallup too, right? Who wasn't in his prime, but did have something to offer for he only had 418 yards last year, but was, like you said, better than the other options that they have. Like Jalen Tolbert was the 250, I believe. And then, but you look at the depth chart, you have Brandon Cooks, he'll start. And is it Turpin? Right? Like Jalen Brooks, I don't know who Jalen Moreno Cropper is. I'm going to be really honest with the audience. I don't know these guys.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is, all right, we're going to be the Dallas Cowboys and lean more into 12 personnel because we spent a 2nd-round draft pick on Luke Schoonmaker last year.
Yeah, which will maybe there is something there with Luke Schoonmaker, who was an older rookie, and you could do some of that. But to do that, you got to be a team that can run the ball well, and
they're not going to be able to run the ball well.
Yeah. So, but they are going to have offensive success. There's undoubtedly will have offensive success. If Dak is healthy all year, they will be a top 10 offense. It's just in a year where it's like truly make or break, it seems like, with the way Jerry Jones is handling it, it just feels like this is not their year to make it.
No, I don't fully know what their obviously their goal is to win a Super Bowl, but I don't know what their direction is.
It makes you think that they're actually just going to move off Dak, and that's why they're doing it.
But they can't. They can't. They're not going to.
We'll see.
They're not going to pay him. They're not going to pay him $40 million to not be part of the roster next year.
We'll see. But I mean, they are operating as if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The other question is Tyler Guyton at left tackle replacing Tyron Smith, and then Cooper Beebe at center. Like you said, that might end up being an upgrade by the end of the year. But you have the 2 All-Pros at your guard spots, and Tyler Smith and Zach Martin. Terrence Steele's a solid right tackle option. It's kind of crazy. It feels like the Cowboys have done it again, and I don't want to judge simply. And I like Tyler Guyton coming out of Oklahoma. We thought he was probably the best offensive lineman down at the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like they've done it again, because I hate to do this for the TPPs, because that's not what TPPs are about. But I watched some of like camp cut-ups of him going against Micah Parsons, and I was like, oh my god, like we're gonna talk about Micah Parsons in a second. Like, he's the ultimate make you look silly even if you're good type of player. And Guyton like held his own. He's looked good in the preseason. So, but here's the thing with that. So I'm expecting Guyton to have a good rookie year. But he could also have a good rookie year and have 3 to 4 dud games. And that could be a huge difference maker for this team when it comes to playing the good teams.
Yeah.
That have those pass rushers.
Yeah, but it's also just not fair that Tyler Smith had all these question marks, even all these injury question marks. And, man, like, Bobby, we liked him, but we saw a very sloppy football player. And then he comes in year 1 and, oh, well, he's going to be a backup guard, and we're gonna ease him in there. Oh, well, he's got to play tackle because of injuries, and he holds his own. And then, all right, now you're going to go to guard where we initially wanted you to play. And you're just going to be as good as Zach Martin right away from the get-go. It's, like, not fair. And I feel like they send all these guys to your boy and our friend, who was it?
Duke Mayweather?
Duke Mayweather. They just draft these offensive linemen, they send them to Duke Mayweather, spend a summer with him, and then they get in the Cowboys camp and they look great. It's kind of not fair. They do have a new O-line coach though this year. I mean, he was with he bounced around the 49ers, I think, when Harbaugh was there. He was the assistant O-line coach for 1 year under McCarthy during a Green Bay year. He was the Giants O-line coach in 2016 and 2017. Yeesh. So they have a new O-line coach this year, and he's been around for a very, very long time. It's like I think he's like 70 years old.
Mike Solari.
Yeah.
He is 69 years old.
69.
Where did he get his coaching start at, Justin?
I don't know. I looked at his Pro Football Reference page today. I didn't look that far. I only
Mission
remember
Bay
part of
High
it.
School in 1976. His first NFL job was the Dallas Cowboys as an assistant O-line coach in 1987.
He's coming back home.
I'm coming home.
Yeah, they just seem like they're Tyler Guyton's going to be fine, and he's going to be really good because that's what the Cowboys do.
Yep,
but will it matter?
Putting Cooper Beebe at center is a smart decision by them too. Like I thought they did really well for themselves in the draft. We'll talk about.
Yep.
The running back game. Here's the thing: is with that offensive line, they should be able to have a good running game, but like you said, they probably have the worst running back situation in the NFL. Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle are their two running backs. Elliott had 3.5 yards per carry after a year after having 3.8 with Dallas. 43rd and 41st
With a great offensive line with Dallas.
Back-to-back years. That wasn't Dallas's best year, but yes, I agree. Tony Pollard had a bad year for them last year. The year before, Tony Pollard really, boomed behind that offensive line. I don't know what they're going to get positively from this run game.
You want to know what they're going to get positively? Dak Prescott's just going to throw the ball. That's what they're going to get positively. He's going to throw the ball more, and he already throws the ball a ton. That's what they're going to get.
Yeah. Let's talk about them defensively. They're making the change from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer. So the biggest thing is they're going to get a little beefier and not so light. This defense, though, Justin, the thing that makes it go is Micah Parsons. Like, he makes this whole thing work. He's led the NFL in total sacks, hits, and pressures in back-to-back years. And the only reason it wasn't 3 years in a row is because they played him a stacked linebacker in like 5 games his rookie year, where he was number 1 in pressure percentage that year, second in win rate. He is insane to watch the way that he moves. Like, it's... I think that there's a good argument to say that Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa are better. But if I'm an offensive tackle and I don't want to and I'm saying which player in the NFL has the biggest potential just to make me look bad, and it's easily Micah Parsons. Like it's just like a never-ending head game because of how quick he is getting upfield laterally, and then when you're trying to prep for that, he'll fucking run through your ass too, right? If he sees that you're on your heels and trying to protect both ways, he'll run right through you, man. Like, he's on a hell of a path. Like, it's going to be crazy some of the heights that he reaches in his career.
But I also think he has that versatility, too, where not everybody can say that he's that versatile of a guy that can drop back into coverage, even though you don't want him doing that all that much. But he can line up in the A gap, he can line up in the B gap, line up in the C gap, he can line up over the center, he can line up over the guard. And, you break the huddle, you never know where he's going to be. And that's the frustrating part, I think, if you're an offensive lineman. At least if you're an offensive lineman, it's like, all right, I know that I'm going to be getting, Bosa on one side every single rep, every single play. And that's how they do it over there. They, at least under Dan Quinn, and it'll be a question this year of how is he utilized and where is he going to line up? Is he just going to be a player that lines up on the edges? Is he just going to be a player that lines up on one side of the formation? Or are they going to continue to use him all over like Dan Quinn did?
That's my biggest question for Mike Zimmer, because there's things that we know he's going to do. Defensive tackle is going to be a little beefier. We're not going to be playing safeties at linebacker. Eric Kendricks coming in, making Mozzie Smith beef back up after, for some reason they made him lose 30 pounds last year. The biggest question is, are they going to line up Micah Parsons all over the field? Because if you do, it just makes it a hard thing to prepare for as an offense, as a passing game, because it's just, if you have him lining up over the center, you cannot put your center one-on-one with him, right?
No.
So you have to give extra help. So you have to slide towards him. And then if it allows for one-on-ones for other guys, that is my biggest question for Mike Zimmer is how do we use Micah Parsons? Do we line up a ball over the field? Mike Zimmer does love the double A gap mugged up look, right? Do we put Micah Parsons in there when you're doing some of those things and let him rush? That's my biggest question for Mike Zimmer on this defense is are we lining Mike Parsons up all over the place?
Yeah, and I would continue to do that, but I don't have that answer yet. We'll see.
Let's talk about the rest of their front. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence was good last year, 4 sacks, 10 tackles for a loss. He may not be the player that he once was, but he is a good presence there, and I think he's a good fit with
really good
Mike
run
Zimmer.
defender.
Yeah. Here's my biggest question for the Dallas Cowboys front. They lost Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong to the Commanders. Sam Williams is out for the year. That's a lot of production. Right? For 3 guys that did not start for them, that was 19 sacks, 8 QB hits, and 66 pressures from those guys. Like that, your depth is basically producing at a Pro Bowl level, right? And it's not like you could go around the league and just be like, oh, well, if you add up anybody's 3 next pass rushers and they get there. No, they don't, right? It's not even close. And that was such a huge part for them. That's a lot of production to replace. And I don't know if Marshawn Nealon and whoever else they want to run out there is going to be able to give them that same burn.
I like Marshawn Nealon. Second round pick was, I guess that's kind of where he was projected to go, but he kind of like flashed to me a little bit at the Senior Bowl, but then I saw that he was a second round pick. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if he flashed like a second round pick, but he was a little bit of an older prospect. I think he has strength and maybe he can add some moves to his game and add some quickness to his game too. Excited to see what he develops. I've heard some good things coming out of preseason with him. Chauncey Golston has never really gotten much of a full opportunity, I guess, over the last 3 years. He was a third-round pick in the 2021 draft. They did recently just add Carl Lawson. So, I mean, there's questions about the depth on the edges.
Yeah, if Carl Lawson
100%.
can play 16 games, you feel better, but that's not a great bet to make.
Where I have the bigger question, because you're right, you're even right about the depth of the edges. That they have really solid players, that departed, but then the injury to Sam Williams really does suck. I think he was going to start knocking on the door a little bit of DeMarcus Lawrence, at least on some pass rushing downs, or you put all of them out there, right? DeMarcus Lawrence on the inside, Sam Williams on the edge, like a little bit of like a NASCAR package of all the speed. That would have been a ton of fun. Bobby, I have major questions about the interior.
Well, I want to add on that because I actually feel better about their interior.
Really?
Maybe I haven't like seen camp updates or preseason enough to where there is alarms for it, but we'll talk about it in a second. Is that when they lost Fowler and Armstrong, it's like, okay, but Sam Williams can be a nice third piece. You drafted Nealon, and it's like, replace with younger guys. And then when Sam Williams went down, that felt like it made losing those other 2 guys a bigger blow. Has Mozzie Smith had a tough camp or anything? Because I'm excited for him with Mike Zimmer because they're going to ask him to beef back up. And then you have Odigizua, who was their 3rd most productive rusher last year. And then you mentioned Golson, who has some good numbers. I know it doesn't have good depth, but I felt good about Mozzie and Odigizua.
They traded for Jordan Phillips with the Giants, and
yes.
he was already getting like run with like first team, second team, like right away with the Cowboys. Which that's what kind of tells me that they need guys, man. So if you want to talk about a position that I'm worried about the depth, I mean, we just mentioned some edge rushers that, Marshawn Nealon was a second-round pick. Chauncey Golston was a former third-round pick, and Carl Lawson, who, if healthy, is decent. So there's still depth there. It's not as good as what it used to be, but the interior is just a very, very different story. You even have questions on Osa, I think, is a really good pass rusher, but I think there's some, I can't tell you how he is fully as a run defender. I think he's more of a pass rush specialist. And Mozzie Smith did inevitably struggle a little bit his rookie year.
Yeah, he wasn't good his rookie year, but they also asked him to play. It just was never a fit with Dan Quinn, where he is there. So to me, it all depends on Mozzie Smith for me.
Yeah, for 100%.
Like, I guess he's not my X factor, but like he could be the X factor for this interior group. And then, like, on the second level, I think Eric Kendricks, I mean, he's a Mike Zimmer guy, obviously at 32 years old. Justin, you really like DeMarvion Overshown. Do you think he takes over that second inside linebacker role?
I do. I hope so. Because Damone Clark, while I think he was all right, and talking about linebacker coverage stuff, if you're not watching him every down, is kind of tough. But I don't think Damone Clark kind of has taken over as much as they've wanted to. And I think DeMarvion Overshown is playing hungry. He's playing confident. I think he's going to be a dude that is going to be a playmaker for this Cowboy defense. And is it fair to call him my X Factor? You know what? I am, because I'm rooting for him. He is going to be my X Factor this year. That may not be the best X Factor, but maybe a guy that's not getting enough talk and not getting enough love is DeMarvion Overshown. This is technically his rookie year, since he went down for the year last year during training camp, so he didn't get to have a rookie year.
How about that? And then the back end, I just want to read a stat.
Sure.
Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland, they have 29 interceptions in the last 3 seasons combined. And Bland wasn't brought in until 2022, and Trayvon Diggs missed almost all of last year. That's insane. Like, that's one of the craziest stats I've ever read.
Yeah. I have some stats on their turnovers too, which I think
talk about them.
More than like roster questions and personnel questions that we have, I think the Cowboys forcing turnovers is the biggest question on if, as a unit, they can continue to do that. In the last 3 years, the Cowboys have 130 EPA from turnovers. That's number 1 in the NFL by a huge margin. Number 2 is 104. Number 3 was down at 71 EPA. The Cowboys nearly have double the number 3 team and exactly double the number 4 team in terms of expected points that have been added to their total with turnovers forced. The Cowboys had 6 return touchdowns on defense, plus a special teams touchdown last year, by far the most in the NFL. So, Bobby, something that we've talked about kind of as the years have gone on with this Cowboy team and this Dan Quinn defense, we've been waiting for the year of regression. When are they going to regress in forcing turnovers? When are they going to regress? I finally got to the point last year, Bobby, we're heading into the year. I was like, you want to know what? They're not going to regress. They're not going to regress. This Dan Quinn defense and the personnel that they have, they just force fucking turnovers. That's what this unit does. And then last year with Deron Bland, they added the element of, okay, we're not only going to catch these interceptions, we're also going to return them back for touchdowns. The biggest question for the Cowboys this year is, are they going to sustain the same, which is a crazy rate over 3 years? Are they going to sustain the same levels of turnovers that they force? Because if they don't, it will not only hurt the defense overall, it's also going to hurt their offense.
I think they'll be close to it, but it is a question on Mike Zimmer. I wish that this show was bigger last year, because you know how like some players will put together like a highlight video in the beginning will be like 10 seconds of like commentators doubting them and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I had the exact line on this show when Trayvon Diggs went out. I was like, this is a huge loss, right? Like, can the Cowboys defense survive with Deron Bland? Absolutely. But he's just not going to create turnovers the way that Trayvon Diggs did. And then he went out and set the freaking pick 6 record. Like went above and beyond. Like I wish that stuff was around so I could be the part of that. And then they have, capable safety play with the guys they have there, like Donovan Wilson. Want to do the new additions versus loss category?
Yeah, and then I do want to have, I know we're running a little long here, but I do want to have a Dak Prescott. Is he here? Is he not here? In contract conversation too. Okay,
so we got new additions. Now, buckle in, this is a long list. Ezekiel Elliott, Jordan Phillips, and Eric Kendricks.
Really?
And yeah, that's it. And then the loss category, you have Tony Pollard, Michael Gallup, Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz, Leighton Vander Esch, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Stephon Gilmore, and Jaron Kearse. Their draft class definitely got worse in that category. Draft class: Tyler Guyton in the first round. Second round, Western Kentucky's Marshawn Nealon, or Western Michigan. I'm getting that wrong. It's Western Michigan. Third round, Cooper Beebe was going to be their starting center. Fourth round, who I'm not sure exactly how his camp has went, how much he's in, but Maurice.
Go ahead.
Luafau, I think I got that right. Kalen Carson, the
Marist.
corner. Yeah, in the 5th round. And then Ryan Florney, Nathan Thomas, and Justin Rogers. I don't know the last 3. The 6th and 7th round picks.
Yeah.
You got anything on Marist?
Yeah, I texted my buddy Mike Bokra. You know Mike. He's a
Yeah.
big Cowboy fan. I trust him with everything. I said, like, what's like the early return and is there hype around him? Marist. I said, you excited about him at all or meh? It's like, I watched him before the draft. He wasn't super crazy about him. Certainly wouldn't have taken him with the 3rd round pick, and that seems to be consensus.
4th.
He's 4th. He seems to be pretty good in the preseason.
No, it was a 3rd. Never mind. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. I thought he was a 3rd. So, yeah, 3rd round pick. Seems to be playing good in preseason, even though a lot of linebackers look good in preseason. More of a run defender compared to a coverage linebacker. And I said, is he buried under the depth chart? He said, I wouldn't say he's buried. He's going to get some playing time, but won't start as of now, I'd say. So there you go. There's your Marist High School write-up.
Okay, how about that?
How about that?
Let's talk about the Dak thing.
Yeah. Wait, also, is this the shortest additions that we've had so far during TPPs?
It's got to be.
It's got to be, right? 3 names? I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I mean, you have old, bad Ezekiel Elliott, old Eric Hendricks, and then Jordan Phillips, who they just traded for.
Yeah, that was just something that happened. If we
recorded this episode a week ago, he wouldn't be on the new additions list.
No.
I hope he makes this team and plays 2 games, by the way. Anyways.
Yeah, so the Giants get that pick. All right, so let's talk about Dak Prescott. I got this snippet from the Warren Sharp football preview, and I like the way that he kind of laid it out. The Cowboys are not innocent and complicit in this whole Dak Prescott situation and having this year having a $55 million cap hit, because they certainly have sat on their hands throughout Dak Prescott's entire career of, number one, building a team around him that could win a Super Bowl, even though the rosters have been good. And then number 2, even just this situation that they find themselves in where his cap hit is so high and he has these void years after. So the Cowboys were unable to negotiate a contract extension for Prescott before his rookie deal and then even after his rookie deal. So what do they have to do? They had to franchise tag him, Bobby. After that expired, they negotiated 1 contract for Prescott and they haven't negotiated another contract since, with Prescott's deal set to expire at the end of this season. So the cost against the cap is massive, and it does hurt the team. And I believe the cost against the cap over the last couple years has been $150.6 million over the last 5 years. Where does that rank in cap dollars in terms of the allocation? It's the number 1 most of any player in the NFL who wasn't cut by their team this season and is therefore eating some of the cap space in dead money, Bobby Skinner. The only player with the higher cumulative cap hit over the last 5 years is Russell Wilson, but Denver wound up cutting him. So, I think there is a point, and you have a great point of commending the Dallas Cowboys for, hey, we're going to ride it. We're going to see what we have in Dak Prescott, I guess, and we're not just going to give out this money and shell out this money. And
I mean, Jones basically said, let's see how the playoffs go this year.
But at the same time, they're in a horrible situation that they have put themselves in where he has such a high cap hit. They have paid him all this money and all these high cap hits over the years, including franchise tagging him after his rookie deal. They didn't renegotiate with him during this, where they could have saved themselves money if they extended him earlier, whether that was during his rookie contract or even during this last stretch of contract. I don't know, man. I feel like they've been complicit in this as well as a football team and as an organization, and they cry wolf like they have no money and they can't pay anybody else, but they're also a part of this because they could have been smarter with how they've allocated Dak Prescott's money. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I agree absolutely, right? The biggest thing that they screwed up by was letting Dak have to go play on the franchise tag. That should have never happened. And like you said, it did screw with them. And end up having to make the money higher, and then you're not reallocating any money from that, and it screwed them, right? Could have lost Amari Cooper because of something like that.
Which they did.
They've also screwed up, like CeeDee Lamb should have been done a year ago, right?
Yes.
Why wasn't CeeDee Lamb's contract done a year ago? Why aren't we talking about Micah Parsons' contract getting done? Right? That should be getting done right now. You should pay him as the number 1 edge rusher right now, and then 3 years from now we all go like, that contract doesn't look that bad. That's what they should do.
You want to hear another stat on how they spend? 2023 Cowboys defense was number 10 in spending. You want to know what they are this year? Number 27. They're the 27th team in spending. The Dallas Cowboys, who are supposed to be America's team, we're all in, we're all this, we're all that. They went from number 10 to number 27, Bobby. It's pathetic in my opinion, man. It's pathetic.
Here's the thing, though, with Dak. I'm not letting past mistakes force me into future one. And Dak is really good, man. He's really good. And if they let him go, they may find themselves not having a quarterback for the next 10 years and playing guys like fucking Quincy Carter, right? That very, trying to reclamation projects of Drew Bledsoe and trying out Drew Henson, right? It could end in that. But I also don't mind a team being like, you know what? If we're going to pay this amount of money, we can't do this in the playoffs every year. We cannot have this happen in the playoffs every single year and demanding more out of the most important position that you play like it'd be one thing if we had like two bad. It's just never been good in the playoffs. Like, and I feel like that is just a part of the conversation. Like you said, it is 100% sports radio, right? Like this type of conversation drives me nuts 99% of the time. But when it comes to Dak, I just feel like it's a part of it, right? Like playoff performance, is it a conversation with Lamar? Absolutely. Still paying Lamar 10 times out of 10. With Dak, it's been just these ultimate. It shows up. I feel like I'm saying the same thing 20 times in a row, but it just happens over and over again. And I don't blame this team for being like, enough. We're not going to do this every single year.
Right.
If we have to reset, we reset.
But that is a huge reset, man. That is a huge reset that I don't know if such a large reset has happened in NFL history. You're talking about a quarterback who's 31 years old, who would be coming off of, I don't know what this year is going to be for Dak, but I think he could finish top 10 in MVP voting again, let's just say. I don't even know if they go to top 10. But he was second in MVP voting to the year prior, right? Still at 31 years old, looking for his second contract. And you have an NFL team not only saying, no thanks, you can walk, but we will also pay you $40 million to walk. That would be a reset that has never happened ever in NFL history.
No, it wouldn't. But I feel like at some point, some team's going to do that with the quarterback contract starting to get even like crazier and crazier every single year. I do feel like some team is finally going to be like, you know what? You're not getting us to where we want to go. Now, hey, if I was the Cowboys owner, I would crumble. I would have given the contract this past year, and I would have moved the money around. I would have given $57 million, $55 million per year, and I'd be like, you know what? It's a lot better than what the alternative probably is. I would have done it, but I also don't. I'm not going to kill them for saying this isn't enough. Enough is enough with not getting even close to the goal that we should have been close to achieving over the last 7 years.
And the crazy thing is that the longer that they wait on Parsons, the longer that they wait on CeeDee Lamb, and the longer that
stuff's unacceptable.
The longer that they wait on Dak Prescott, the more money that they're going to get, and then there's less money for everyone else. And thank God they draft well. Thank God they draft well. The reason why they have such a good roster is because they do draft well.
Yeah.
But their allocation of resources has just been so piss poor, because then they cry about, we don't have money to spend here, we don't have money to spend there. But because you sit on your hands and you wait so goddamn long to extend these guys, then you have to give them more money. Dak Prescott is going to get over $60 million per year, per season next year, even now, if the Cowboys extend him.
I also think there's two parts of this too. Dak can't be franchise tagged. And he knows that he can maybe get a fully guaranteed contract out there. And
the AAY, average annual value per year, will start with a 6. It will.
Agreed. So I guess it's not. I don't think it's just the Cowboys in this. I like maybe Dak isn't going to take the Jared Goff contract. Yeah. Well, so we'll see. He won that once, right? When ended up getting franchise tagged and then getting the contract the year after. So he's won that before. Maybe he's willing to win it again. Forget X Factor. Mine's Deron Bland. Over under 10.5 wins for this team.
Well, it's officially our longest TPP. It breaks the Jets record of 38 minutes. Dude, 10.5, man. This is so tough. Shit.
I got them under at 10 wins.
You got them
They
under?
have to play the AFC North this year. The Texans, the 49ers, the Lions, the Eagles twice, and even the Falcons. With the way they performed against playoff teams, I got them going at 10-7 this year.
You know what? I'll go under, even though I don't feel great about it. I still think they can win the East because I think the Eagles collapse could be more dramatic than the Cowboys collapse. So I still think they could win. It's an under, but I don't feel good about it. But their schedule is tougher. They still play relatively an easy, passing, like an offensive schedule. Like the defenses they're facing are still relatively easy, but it's going from the number one easiest schedule that they had last year. I think it's down to 10th, which is still a difference. So,
right, all right. That's the Dallas Cowboys, and this is Football Today.